Drilling fluids touch just about everything in the drilling process. We're here to deconstruct the drilling process and drilling fluid concepts to provide a deeper understanding of our industry. In each episode, we'll share information, talk to interesting people, and maybe share a few stories along the way. Welcome to the Flowline, a production of AES Drilling Fluids, brought to you by Matt Offenbacher and Justin Gauthier.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Flowline. As you can see here, I've got Matt Offenbacher, lovely co-host, and a little surprise guest, Mr. Richard Toomes, aka Ricky. We in one of the previous episodes we talked about the AADE conference that we attended, had some great speakers, authored some great papers, and so Matt, I thought it'd be a good opportunity to bring in one of the authors, and what we're gonna do is have kind of a series of sort of paper reviews and just kind of highlight some of the amazing things that we were able to study, report on, present on, and just kind of give an opportunity for the authors to share about the papers. And so, Matt, I mean, what do you think, buddy? Is this like a good time to do that? Or Ricky's ready, he's got his white shirt, he's a face for radio.
Yeah, I feel like that decision was
Dress
made
up
when
a
we
little.
invited Ricky in, but so hopefully this works out. But it's one of those, Justin, I think we've talked about it in the past. We try really hard to come up with good content as far as technical papers. Like we hope that we educate the industry and that like people want to read what we put out, that it's insightful. And so the things, this year's conference, one was we presented 3 papers, but they were all with other operators, which is usually kind of a nice partnership. But the other thing is we had, some interesting case history and really got to the nuts and bolts. It wasn't as much theory. It was direct observations happening at the rig. And so, of those 3 papers, one of them, I mean, we've done episodes on horseshoe wells, but this is like, actually drilling it, not here's some things to look out for, but like, this is what we did.
Yeah.
And so we did this paper with Canvas Energy. Michael Lindsay actually presented it, and he did a great job. But
Big shout
Ricky
out.
ran point on this one. So, Ricky, I think it's your turn to introduce yourself
Yes.
and tell us a little bit about this paper.
This paper, yeah, sure. No, well, first, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. It was an exciting paper to write. It's always exciting to work with operators in this sort of co-author a technical paper like this, because particularly this one, and even the other one that I actually wrote 2 other papers I know you're going to talk about at another point. But when you do these with operators, sometimes you get guys that are like, okay, I'm willing to write this paper with you, but I'm very busy. I got a lot of other things going on. You can put my name on it, and I'll help you walk through it, and I'll send you the data you need. But with Michael and even the other papers this year, it was really interesting because he was super engaged and wanted to write this with us from the very jump. In fact, I think they reached out to us, when we saw that they were drilling this well, this U-turn lateral with water-based mud in Oklahoma. They had reached out to us, or there was some sort of mutual interest to do this, where normally it's us reaching out to the operator saying, hey, we think there's something novel or interesting or some technology that was used. So right from the jump, it was really interesting to have someone like himself, be so forthcoming with all the data, all the stuff we need to write the meat of the paper, but also like his just sort of general interest in working through this with us in terms of just actually writing the paper was really cool. So yeah, no, it was the experience itself was great. Yeah, the actual paper, the title of it is "Refining Best Practices of Horseshoe Wells: A New Case History," and I think that the sort of high line of it is, we drilled a U-turn or horseshoe well or U-shaped well, whatever terminology you want to call it, right? We drilled it with water-based mud, and we did it in Oklahoma. And so that was sort of new for us and new for the state. I think, depending on where you look back, I think it was one of the very first ones done with water-based mud, if not the first one, depending on who you talk to. And so that was sort of the novelty of it from the jump. But yeah, no, the getting into sort of how we wrote the paper, a lot of it was up front. Again, it's myself and Matt here as co-authors on the service AES drilling fluid side, and then we've got Michael Lindsay with Canvas Energy as the drilling engineer on that side of it, right? And so a lot of this is reviewing horseshoe wells and their history of them and where we've done them before, not just us, but just, globally. Some of the obvious, I won't say so obvious, but some of the obvious things that you got to look out for in terms of drilling engineering, but also from a fluids perspective when it comes down to drilling U-turn wells, in terms of challenges and stuff like that. And so we walk through a lot of that stuff, and then we get into the case history where we actually, we go over how we drilled this well in Oklahoma. It was in Kingfisher County. And so we get into that part, and that's where, sort of the interesting thing for me at least is I'm certainly not formally educated as an engineer, drilling engineer, right? Most of the things that I do are always sort of from the lens of drilling fluids and the drilling fluids perspective on engineering, but you come to learn things, even outside of your sort of core domain. And so when I'm working with Michael on this stuff, you're sort of learning a lot more about some of the things that you have a pretty good idea about. But when it comes to, for instance, horseshoe wells, where well tortuosity or, torque and drag and hook load modeling and some of these other things that makes you step out of what you typically model for, like hole cleaning, for instance, it sort of challenges you to learn a little bit more outside of what you do. And so that was fun to do with him.
What was there sort of anything out of the norm or anything that sort of surprised you that regarding sort of more from like the drilling engineering standpoint versus just the fluid point?
I think what was really interesting, I mean, the big interest for this one is that we were able to drill a U-turn well with water-based mud, and a fairly simple water-based mud. I mean, this was basically fresh water. That was about 8.5 pounds per gallon once you throw a little solids in it. And so all of the modeling that those guys did on the well design front, looked at, there was several kind of pitfalls and challenges, but one of them was, can we drill with water-based mud or oil-based mud? Do we need oil-based mud like every other U-turn likely needed for the friction relief, for the lower torque, lower friction factors in general? And so they looked at offsets near there in the same formation type, like try to get a close enough proxy, and they found out that, after running modeling that, hey, our friction factors with this 6 1/8 inch open hole and this drill pipe and et cetera, says we can get away with it. And so for me, that was really cool to see, like, the point at which they say this risk that we see here, at least the sort of limiter that we find of torque and, hole cleaning and some of these other things, aren't that severe. And we think we can get away with it with water-based mud. And that's where we kind of came in with the fluid. And of course, a lubricant was a big piece of this, unlocking it. That was another part that we dive into in the paper as well, is sort of the lubricant's contribution to getting it down successfully. Not just drilling the well, but getting the liner ran.
Yeah. So from a fluids perspective, can you kind of double click on the lubricant aspect, like the sort of the rationale behind maybe which one, or how did the team decide which one and to evaluate?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like the lubricant selection you use is sometimes different depending on where you're drilling and the source type of water and all that, right? So I should say they've drilled, I think they finished the third U-turn lateral that they had planned to drill. This paper was just covering the first one that we did. They had since drilled a second and now finished their third.
Oh, wow.
The first one they used Interlube on the first one, which was a lubricant that we'd had for years. Excellent lubricant that had worked well. And we had been sort of transitioning to our latest lubricant, Brinex, and they actually started using Brinex on that second and third well. They've helped successfully get those down as well. And so a bit of a mixed bag in terms of which lubricant they used, but it was pretty apparent when you look at things like, with and without lube, their expected friction factors and what they had when they, for instance, spotted a lubricant in the open hole after they TD'd the well before they ran the liner. You can see those friction factors. Again, that lubricant spotted at, I think it was 5 or 6% by volume in the open hole area. When you run that liner, how much lower those friction factors were. They were planning to have to they were expecting to have to rotate the liner to bottom, depending on what they ran into. They still had to float it, but they did not have to rotate it at all, which was cited as a pretty huge success. And I think a solid lubricant helps contribute to that.
Nice. What was the sort of the leg lengths? You may have mentioned it already.
Yeah, so it was a mile on each one. Right?
Okay, so 2 mile basically.
A total of cumulative 2 mile.
Okay.
But the actual full drilling, including the turn, was about 12,000 feet. So
that's pretty
it
good.
they didn't complete the turn.
Yeah, they crossed their lease line, I believe, right?
They did, yeah. They crossed their lease line, which was, I mean, that's sort of the impetus. That was the whole reason for them doing this was
Location
like-
issue, right?
yeah, like much like a lot of these U-turn wells, is location lease constraints, and then like there was some sort of surface hazard, like there might have been nearby like river or
Yeah, I
creek
think they
or
were.
something
Yeah,
Interesting.
that wouldn't allow them to move the rig or some constraint to that effect. And so there's a couple different things that had them do that. So yeah, they couldn't produce the turn, but they drilled a total of what would be the equivalent of a 2 mile lateral or 2 1 mile laterals.
Nice.
And produced it that way, and then found a bunch of cost savings that way too, right?
Yeah. No, I had a meeting with a customer yesterday they're in the Eagleford, never done a horseshoe well, and he's sort of the drilling team lead, and the executive team and management are still up in arms about the risks and this and that, and I was talking to him actually about the paper and like some of the successes we've had drilling horseshoe wells, and he's just like, I know, he's like, just convincing people that have never done it before, it's like this big just engineering complexity, design, and just all sorts of fear setting and trying to do something like this. And anyway, he said that they finally got the green light to go ahead and do it. And I was like, yeah, there's probably at least like 100 that have been drilled by now, like getting close to like
There's a lot. Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
happening everywhere. And then with water-based mud too, it's wild. And like we talk about all the time, Matt, it's like, it's not every well has to be a horseshoe well, but the tool is there in case you need it. And obviously when you're restricted due to land or some other constraints, it's
right.
It's pretty neat. That's cool though. Matt, any sort of questions around the paper? Or?
I mean, I guess this is probably a broader philosophical thing, but expanding on one of the points you made, Justin, with respect to, it seems like each operator goes through this experience of, I've never done this. We need to get everybody on board with the risk. And even, within AES, we've probably done 50 or 60 of these things. I mean, it's like that may be a little high, but like it's become a point now where we find out after the fact, where for the first couple, it was like, all right, guys, what are we going to do? And now it's just been like, hey, did a couple more, and so I think, it's becoming part of the playbook, but each operator has to have that experience on their own to like get acceptance. And then you have other folks who are like, well, it's inevitable, we're going to have to do this. But I guess, Ricky, from what you've seen, both from this one and some of the others,
Mm-hmm.
do you see a similar, like, I guess, hesitation and then like, okay, well, now we're going to do 2 more? Or
Yeah, that seems to be, I mean, we've got some folks right now in the Permian that are doing the same thing with us on water-based mud, and trying it out there. And I think a lot of that risk, tolerance, and then ultimately coming up with some risk mitigation, contingency planning helps alleviate a lot of that, I mean, that was, again, we get into it in the paper here of like, we had oil-based mud on site, ready to displace if we needed to, right? We had an RSS laying out there if we needed to go to that, if we couldn't. And in fact, they've now drilled, I think, the second well with an RSS or attempted to, but they got that one down successfully. But I mean, like, they had some of those other, contingencies available because, of course, like you can do a lot of modeling, but it's not until you actually, run this, to actually, be, to feel good about what you've done and make sure that your engineering practices are in line. And so, yeah, like you see, and I think it depends, of course, on the operator and their sort of general philosophy. I mean, we've got a lot of customers that are, global E&Ps, and they operate with a global sort of drilling practice, right? And then you've got Canvas is very, very small. And there's probably a quite small team, and their view of risk and some of these other things are a little different, right? Sure. And so, you got a whole gamut of that you've got to sort of engineer around, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's cool. I mean, bringing up the contingencies, that I love the story that kind of Michael lays out, where it was like, look, for the first well, we had all this stuff, and we didn't use a bunch of it, but we were prepared to, and the models told us what benefits we would get if, what if scenarios, and then by the second well, we started dropping those things off once it became clear that like those risks weren't what we thought they were. And then, okay, now we got a playbook. Like we're able to just continue lower cost. And I think philosophically for me, when you implement new technology, that's one of the things where it's like, okay, get a good one down, take notes, and now we can talk about lowering costs. But if you go in cheap you have a hard time figuring out if the technology is practical or achievable. And if you have a failure, everybody just says, oh, look, it doesn't work. And it's like, well, maybe it would have if we would have, so like get a good one down and then let's figure out how to make it cheaper. And I feel like Michael shares some great stories with Canvas and just the efforts to keep doing that, continually improving.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and that was, there was certainly some lessons learned, like there are in every well you drill, or there's something we could have done different, a little bit better. The fact that it went so well on that first one, they were super excited by. But I mean, there was halfway through the return leg, they were having issues with torque. Things started slowing down, so they drained the pits. They're drilling with just fresh water and pump and sweep. So drain the pits, add a whole new fresh batch of fluid into the pit. But all of a sudden, our lubricant, like we need to add more lubricant concentration to it. So that sort of limited, once again, it kind of went back to what your lubricant was doing for you in that moment. They had this sort of controlled drill, and it took them a little longer to get that last leg completed. And so they next one, we're going to, kind of stay ahead of that and improve that. And so, there's always a lot to learn, but I know they were super excited to do it. And I think just evidenced by the fact that they've now drilled another 2 after it, show that they're pretty confident what they've been doing.
That's super cool. So for those who weren't at the conference, fellas, what's the best way for folks to be able to access these papers? Are they free online? I know AADE used to.
They are. Yeah, AADE.org. And then there's, you just navigate through the website and you'll go to the 2025 National Technical Conference. They should be up by now. I don't know.
They should be, although I feel like it's been a little slow. But the thing is, what's really cool about the AADE is they'll let us distribute, right? So
yeah.
If it's on the website, I encourage you to go there. But if you can't get it, we can email it out. It's not like some of these other places where you got to pay or anything like that.
Cool.
So we're happy to share, and it could be a good story, and hopefully somebody can keep building on it. Hopefully it's us.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Ricky, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming on, being the face of radio like you are. It's not often we get to pull you into the studio here. And
I appreciate it, Phyllis. Yeah.
You came with your best foot forward, so really appreciate that. And for folks out there, if you have any other questions, thoughts, or if you want access to the papers, if you can't access them, reach out to either Matt or I on LinkedIn, or you can email us at the Flowline podcast at aesfluids.com. Ricky, again, big thanks, and a big shout out to Canvas, Mr. Michael Lindsay, if you're listening. If not, just again, can't reiterate just our gratitude towards having operators and customers work with us on things like that, because we're all so busy in the knife fight every day trying to get through these wells, but taking time to help educate the ecosystem and drilling fluids is just helps the industry in general. And so big shout out to everyone involved with there. Big shout out to AADE. Ricky, any closing last words? Anything you want to tell to the drilling fluids world?
No,
it doesn't even have to be mud related.
Yeah. I think I was actually just reiterate what you said, thanking Michael and Canvas Energy, and just and also just sort of it kind of serves as an example that there's times where we can sort of help each other get the story out for some new things that happen through these technical papers. And this is a pretty good example of that. Again, I know you're going to talk about a few other papers where we did the very same thing with some operators that were super engaged. And I think that comes through in these papers. And I think it's a big deal at these conferences, right? We get this stuff out and people are super interested in what happened and sort of the details of it. And so I think just asking folks to sort of embrace that sort of, working with us on some of these things when they happen, some of these new technical, novel case history type papers are super interesting. So
absolutely. Matt, how about you, buddy? Any closing last words?
Can only reiterate, it's such a wonderful exercise to get to work with a drilling engineer and get into the weeds a little bit and understand more about where they're coming from, and sort of, okay, this was my thought process as I designed the well. Okay, this was our thought process as we made fluid recommendations, and bring that whole story together. And you don't always get a glimpse of that, but to be able to write it together is great. So many thanks to Michael and to Canvas for allowing that to happen.
Excellent. Well, take care, everyone. Please stay connected, subscribe, review, share. Until next time, cheers, guys.
Take care.
Adios.
Thanks for listening. Please tune in next week for another exciting episode of The Flowline. And remember, may your returns always be full and your trips always smooth. Views expressed in this program belong to participants and not their employees. The program is for informational purposes only and cannot take the place of seeking professional advice. Copyright AES Drilling Fluids.